It's LC Holt here. This is my update for the first week of February. And today, we're going to be talking about we're actually going to be continuing our exploration of the Batman cinematic mythology with an exploration of the Joel Schumacher films. He's the man who followed up Batman Returns with Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. So we're going to have a lot to talk about, I think it's safe to say.
Yes.
It might get ugly from time to time.
It might. Batman not so forever.
Not forever, no. But he tried. I'll kind of save some of my ideas about Joel Schumacher for the very end. We'll talk about some stuff. I don't dislike Joel Schumacher. I mean, not personally, I don't know the man. But in terms of his work, I think he's done some interesting work. He had done The Lost Boys prior to this.
I like Lost Boys.
Flatliners, which maybe hasn't aged so well, but I like it. Certainly a lot better than the remake they made of it, which I couldn't get more than 15 minutes through. Because it's like Flatliners. Why would you remake that?
Yeah. Well, why do they remake a lot of things?
There you go. The Client, which he had done just prior to this.
Yeah.
And then later after Batman Forever, but before Batman and Robin, he did A Time to Kill. So he was like going through his John Grisham phase.
That's right.
Now, after Batman Returns, Tim Burton was originally going to return for a third film.
As was Mr. Keaton.
Yes, and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yes.
She was going to return for Batman Part 3, and then she was going to have her own spin-off movie for Catwoman. That was the plan while Tim Burton was still in charge. Eventually, they made that spin-off after years of development, only without Michelle Pfeiffer and with Halle Berry in 2004, and that's a whole...
That's another can of worms.
That's a can of worms we're not going to open here today. But, I mean, Tim Burton was developing a script for a third Batman movie with a husband and wife team named Lee and Janet Batchelor. And they had started working on the script. Now, here is Tim Burton's originally proposed cast list for Batman Part 3.
Okay.
Batman Continues, we shall call it. Michael Keaton is Batman.
Yay!
Michelle Pfeiffer is Catwoman.
Yay!
Billy D. Williams is Two-Face, because he was going to round out the...
That's right.
What he started with the first Batman, with
that
Billy D.
Been so good.
Robin Williams as the Riddler was Tim Burton's choice. And it remained Joel Schumacher's choice later. Rene Russo as Dr. Chase Meridian. And Marlon Wayans as Robin. Now,
heard that.
He was originally cast, Marlon Wayans, when Robin was going to be included in Batman Returns. And then script rewrites, Tim Burton decided there were too many characters already in Batman Returns.
Now, I thought he had said something about, he didn't want Robin in the very beginning. Yeah. Because it was kind of a weird...
It was a weird sort of thing.
Dynamic.
He didn't want to copy the 66 kind of camp thing, which kind of comes with the territory when you have a grown man and a young boy in tights.
Yeah.
And it's a little odd. But so Tim Burton kind of avoided that. They got very close with Batman Returns to having Robin in there in the guise of a inner city car mechanic. And he was going to be played by Marlon Wayans. Sam Hamm wrote him into the script. Burton eventually, when Sam Hamm was rewritten by Daniel Walters and other people, he kind of pushed Robin out of Part 2, but they kept Marlon Wayans on contract to appear in the third film, because apparently Tim Burton was ready to throw some Robin in there in Part 3. But the problem really came when Warner Brothers felt the heat from McDonald's and a lot of parents across the country who said that Batman Returns was inappropriate for children. They looked at the fact that it made $150 million less than the first Batman as being a sign that this boycott worked and people weren't going to go see the movie. And
sequels usually don't make as much as the original film if they want to look at numbers.
And by 1989 standards, very few movies made Batman numbers.
Yeah.
That was a phenomenon.
Yeah.
Safe to say, a phenomenon.
Yeah.
So to follow that up with the exact same thing, you can't catch lightning in a bottle.
No.
So, look, they were getting cold feet about this Tim Burton thing. They thought he was too dark. And
too dark for the Dark Knight.
Right. And so they sort of they made him feel persona non grata, and Tim Burton didn't really care for that, as most people wouldn't. And so he left. He said, well, okay, fine. You don't want to do anything I want to do, because he had some meetings with him, and there was a cast list that I just talked about, and a script was being written. But he left. And so pretty much quickly on the heels of that, Joel Schumacher tells an interesting story. He did in an interview around this time. He said that he had heard some rumblings about Tim Burton leaving Batman. And based on the success of his early movies, Joel Schumacher, he'd heard from his agent that they might be interested in offering him Batman. But he didn't really believe it.
Yeah.
And then Warner Brothers brought him into the room. And this is what Joel Schumacher said that the Warner Brothers execs told him. And this is probably pretty, this will give you an idea of where this is going. They told Joel, we are willing now to offer you our most financially viable asset. And so Joel Schumacher was like, what? And they said, Batman. And so already the corporation is looking at this not really as a creative venture, but as something that would be
money,
marketable, merchandising, T-shirts, tie-ins with. They want to get McDonald's back on their side,
which they did. Because I remember when Forever came out, those flipping glass cups. Remember?
And Taco Bell.
Oh, and Taco Bell.
Taco Bell was the big one I remember. Now Joel Schumacher originally, when he got this job, said, I really like Batman Year One. And they were like, yeah, but isn't that dark? And he was like, well, yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing, right? And they're like, no, family friendly. There was a new producer on this.
So that's probably why he was like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, he wanted to do a dark Batman movie. Because his work in the past, he's done dark shit. I mean, there's some dark shit in some of his earlier stuff.
Lost Boys.
Yeah, Lost Boys. I mean, even Flatliners.
Yeah.
Really weird, like hellish, crazy hallucinations and stuff. Peter McGregor Scott was the new producer brought on to work on the third Batman movie. And he, along with Warner Brothers, thought we have to go family friendly. Now, originally, Michael Keaton, there is a myth that Michael Keaton left as soon as Tim Burton did.
Yeah.
That's actually not true. Michael Keaton stayed on while Joel Schumacher was there. And they were talking about doing Batman Year One or something similar to that, kind of a prequel story.
Mm-hmm.
And WB wanted a sequel. They didn't want all this prequel talk. And so basically, when the decision was made to do something light and family friendly, and Year One was thrown out and Dark was thrown out, Michael Keaton just sort of said, okay, I don't think I want to do that. Because I think he kind of saw where it was going.
Yeah.
And they offered him $15 million to stay. And Michael Keaton turned him down.
What did he do instead? Multiplicity?
I think so. Which I'm pretty sure didn't pay him $15 million.
No.
I'm sure he got quite a lot. But Joel Schumacher brought on Akiva Goldsmith to work on the script with him. And Akiva's job was to do his lightning touch. His job was to make it more family friendly. But then now that Keaton was gone, what they had to get into was they had to figure out who was going to play Batman. And several people were considered. Ethan Hawke. Young Ethan Hawke. Because remember, they wanted to go young. They didn't want to do a prequel, but they wanted to do young Batman. Younger actor. What do you think of Ethan Hawke?
He was hot at the time. I mean, he was like, not like, I don't mean like, oh, he's hot, but.
Yeah. You didn't have his posters up there?
I did not.
From Dead Poets Society, him looking tortured?
No. He was popular at the time, is what I mean.
What about Ralph Fiennes? This was pre-Schindler's List. Actually, it was kind of around the time of Schindler's List. Yeah. So it's Schindler's List era Ralph Fiennes.
That's what I was thinking.
As Batman. You can't really see him as, he's sort of a Nazi in your mind.
I know, yeah.
So he was one of, Billy Baldwin is someone Schumacher had worked with on Flatliners. So he brought Billy Baldwin into the discussion. Billy Baldwin being the youngest Baldwin brother.
Yeah. Which the studio is like, absolutely not.
They didn't like that, no. And then, this is no shock, Johnny Depp was considered.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I make that face?
But you know what Johnny Depp was busy doing at that time? Ed Wood with his buddy Tim Burton. That kind of took him out of the running. So what basically Joel Schumacher said was, Val Kilmer has a good look, and he's dark, and he might be a good Batman. This is a decision Joel Schumacher would come to regret on a personal basis, even more than on a professional basis. And Val Kilmer probably heard this offer come to him and saw money signs, because he signed on without reading the script. The story was he was off in I think he was in Africa in a cave, and this might be kind of apocryphal, but this is the story Val Kilmer tells. He was in a bat cave, he said, researching for The Ghost in the Darkness film he did, which is a good movie, by the way, with Michael Douglas. When the offer came to him to do Batman. So he took it, sight unseen. He didn't even know they were doing the light and fluffy version of Batman, but he learned pretty quickly, probably in his first meeting. Now, subsequent to Val Kilmer being hired, Rene Russo was fired because they thought Rene Russo was too old to play love interest to Val Kilmer. She would have been good with Michael Keaton, but they wanted someone more Val Kilmer's age. I don't really think Rene Russo was that old. I don't
think so.
I mean, she's older. She's a little older than Nicole Kidman.
Why did they just get Mel Gibson? Just keep the trend.
I know. And remember, he was considered for the first Batman.
That's right.
When we went through those on the previous show. So when she got booted out, they started going through, like, who's the hot young actress in Hollywood? People like Janine Triplehorn.
Yeah.
We all remember Janine Triplehorn, right?
Oh, yeah.
Dominic J says, hey, what's up? Hey, Dominic, thanks for joining on the show. So Janine Triplehorn was, if I can say that without stuttering it out, was one of the people who was considered to be Dr. Chase Meridian. Another person, Robin Wright. Right around the time period of Forrest Gump. So Ginny was considered to be Dr. Chase Meridian in Batman Part 3.
What if Batman were played by Forrest Gump?
But I would watch that movie. That movie would probably if Forrest Gump had played him in Batman and Robin, it would have been an even better movie.
It would have, actually. Yeah.
It would, at the very least, would have been entertaining. So anyway, who was eventually cast? I've already kind of led this. Was Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
And so she was cast opposite Val Kilmer. Joel Schumacher said, remember, he had just done The Client. He had wrapped that. It had just come out when he got this job. And it had been a huge success for Warner Brothers. So that was probably a big part of why they wanted him to do Batman. But he said that when he heard about Harvey Dent, Two-Face, there was only one actor he could imagine playing that role. And I say Billy D. Williams.
That's right.
Because he already is under contract to play the role. Well, that's not what Joel Schumacher said. He just done The Client, which co-starred Tommy Lee Jones. And he said, in his mind, the only person meant to play that role was Tommy Lee Jones.
Wrong.
I agree. I think Billy D. Williams should have played.
Yes.
He should have played the role.
We could have seen the whole arc.
Yes, absolutely. But Joel Schumacher did not see eye to eye with you or I. Or Billy D., because he really wanted to play this. He wanted to be Two-Face.
I'm with you, Billy D.
They bought out his contract. They paid him, which is good. They paid him the money to, that he would have gotten to make the movie.
Do you think he was upset? Probably not in the end. He was probably like, I dodged a bullet.
He probably thought that in the end, when he saw the movie. I'm sure at the time he was pissed, but then again, he cried his way all the way to the bank because at least they paid him, because a lot of times you don't get paid.
Yeah.
Like, if it would have been a real tragedy if they had just dropped him without a pay.
That would have sucked. You know what they should have done? He should have done when they got the months that he was supposed to be working. He just took a cruise somewhere.
Right, yeah, and sat back and thought, I'm not in all this Rick Baker makeup. This is great. Now, Robin Williams, as I said, was Tim Burton's original choice for the Riddler. It was also on board with Joel Schumacher.
Can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. What were the plans for Tim Burton's Riddler? Was it going to be more like the one in the bowler cap, or are we going to rip off the 60s?
No, it was going to be, the dark version. It was going to be the original. Well, I don't know wardrobe-wise. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that personality.
Yeah.
That you always see.
It would not have been the 60s because Tim Burton didn't like the old TV show. So nothing he did was emulating it. So, no, it would not have been what we saw in the movie.
Because I did not like the Riddler and Batman Forever.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't Robin Williams ultimately.
Yeah.
Joel Schumacher said that for a year while they were developing this and casting it, he kept asking Robin Williams if he was going to do the movie, and he was looking for a yes. And Robin Williams said, I'm really interested. I kind of want to do it. But he never said yes. So eventually they had to cast
Well, he
it.
probably wanted to see a script.
Some story says that the reason Robin Williams let him on so much is because he was pissed over what they did with him and Jack Nicholson.
Oh, yeah.
So he kind of led not necessarily Joel Schumacher, but Warner Brothers and producers were like, oh, now you want me? Well, I'm tell you, maybe I'm not going to say yes right away. Maybe I'll take a year and think about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Robin was really that interested in playing the Riddler. If he was, he probably would have eventually just been like, okay, whatever. I've punished him enough. But either way, there was this hot young actor, this hot young comedian who you love more than life itself, a man named Jim Carrey, had just done 3 films. Ace Ventura, The Pet Detective, which is an immortal classic. I'm just trying to elicit these reactions from her face. Dumb and Dumber, an even more immortal classic. And The Mask, which isn't all that bad.
I like The Mask.
Yeah, The Mask is pretty good.
The Mask is the one that I like.
He was a huge star at this time.
And obnoxious.
You didn't like Jim Carrey.
I just thought he was obnoxious.
But that was part of his thing, right?
He couldn't turn it off.
No. In every movie, he was basically Jim Carrey.
Yes, making that stupid face.
To varying levels.
Yes.
He was like normal Jim Carrey when he was in The Mask as Stanley, and then he became crazy Jim Carrey.
I don't want to hear anybody comment, but what about Man on the Moon?
That wasn't around yet, though. This was even pre-Cable Guy. Mm-hmm. He was still...
Cable Guy. Do your impersonation of that.
What? Which one?
The Cable Guy.
Oh, Cable Guy?
The Matthew Broderick.
Oh, the Matthew Broderick, yes. The dry performance, like he doesn't want to be there. He's like, okay, well, just fix my cable already. Matthew Broderick did several movies, like Godzilla was another one, where it was just like,
I saw that one in the theater.
That is a giant lizard. Like he's just delivering lines like they're on a piece of like warped cardboard behind the camera. It's like, where's my paycheck now? Oh, wow, giant lizard. But anyway, so this was pre-Cable Guy. And Jim Carrey was the hot ticket, man.
Yeah.
And so they hired him for the Riddler. Joel Schumacher was actually quite happy they hired him for the Riddler, and I'll tell you why. Because Joel Schumacher later said that Jim Carrey was the most amiable person on that set.
Okay, then I feel bad.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
He said compared to everybody else, Jim Carrey was like the man that saved his soul because everyone else was so fucking difficult on this movie, including people that he had worked with in the past. For some reason, Batman Forever, which is what the film eventually was called, brought out the worst in people.
Well, maybe it was just the production. Maybe they were like, what is this?
Well, look, here's the thing. There was a lot of ego going on.
Yeah.
Logan, thanks for joining the show, man. One of the main things about this thing, about Batman Forever, was like Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones didn't get along together. I'll tell you a brief story. And this is one story. I'm not speaking out of school because Jim Carrey himself has told this story. Before they were shooting the movie, Jim Carrey walked into a restaurant. The maitre d' said, hey, I hear you're doing a movie with Tommy Lee Jones. He's sitting over there. Jim Carrey had never met Tommy Lee Jones before, was a great admirer of him as an actor. And he said, big fan of The Fugitive. A big fan of everything, I guess. Coal miner's daughter. That's right. You want my Woody Woodpecker? That whole thing. And so the maitre d' said, do you want me to go over and take you to his table? And Jim Carrey was like, yeah, I'd love to meet him before we work together. So Jim Carrey goes over to Tommy Lee Jones's table, and Tommy Lee kind of looks up at him, squinting, because Tommy Lee Jones is not known for his, comedy sensibility. Mm-hmm. And he looks up at Jim Carrey and says, oh, hi. And Jim Carrey's like, well, I'm Jim Carrey, and we're about to do this movie together, Batman. We're going to be in a lot of scenes together. And he said that Tommy Lee Jones said, I hate you. He said, I really hate you. I cannot sanction your buffoonery. And then turned away and went back to eating. I do have to say I possessed Tommy Lee Jones that meal. That was you? Him, yes. Yeah. Well, this explains it all. She is secretly Pazuzu. The demon of the wind, the empress of the locusts. But anyway, so starting off, they did not. Well, Jim Carrey liked Tommy Lee Jones. The feeling was obviously not mutual. Joel Schumacher said that on set it was very difficult because he thought Tommy Lee Jones felt that Jim was always trying to upstage him, and he felt kind of intimidated by that and didn't like. Because I mean, Jim Carrey in this movie is playing it at 11 stupid. Like he's going all the way with this shit.
When I saw it, I remember thinking, why are all the bad guys acting like Joker?
That's another weird thing, which let me talk about some more of the tension before we get into the story thing. But Val Kilmer, the reason before I said that Val Kilmer was going to be the bane of Schumacher's existence is because Val Kilmer at this time, I'm not trying to say anything about him now, was a fucking asshole.
Yes.
He was not a very nice guy.
What was that movie you did with
The Island of Dr. Moreau? Yeah, which he had not done yet, but he was still in that mode. He was very into the isness and suchness of his Val Kilmerisms. You know, he thought he was the greatest thing since.
I mean, I guess when you're in Willow, that happens.
Well, hey, right. Yeah, I guess so. But at one point, he was so rude to crew members that Joel Schumacher he said, Val, look, you can't be this way to people. Not on my set. You're going to have to calm down. And Val Kilmer.
Well, good for Joel.
And Val Kilmer said, fuck off, and didn't speak to him for 2 weeks. So this is the working environment, Joel Schumacher. Now you probably understand why he liked Jim Carrey's company so much.
Well, yeah. Now I feel bad for Joel Schumacher. I made fun of these movies all these years.
It was a tough one.
I feel bad.
I think Chris O'Donnell and Jim Carrey were the two people that helped Joel Schumacher along, because Chris O'Donnell was really into this thing.
Yeah.
He actually replaced the producer's first choice, which was Leonardo DiCaprio, which at this point in time, the first choice for every role of a certain age was always Leonardo DiCaprio.
And they wanted him for Anakin Skywalker, supposedly.
And like this, DiCaprio sat down, had one interview with Joel Schumacher, and it was like, nah, I'm not interested in doing that movie. So anyway, you got this whole thing where Schumacher was trying to do his own version of the Batman universe. He saw Gotham City as less kind of like the gritty, dark thing, more day glow and neon. He said it was like the World's Fair in Tokyo was what he was imagining Gotham City to look like.
Because when you think of Gotham,
you think of World's Fair in Tokyo. You also think of nipples, because he put nipples on them rubber bat suits. This was a lot of controversy about this in the press. I remember I was a teenager when this was going on.
Yeah.
And everybody was talking about these damn nipples on this. And the suits were designed to be very kind of anatomically correct, was the thing Joel Schumacher was into. A lot of big predominant cod pieces and nipples.
I remember when we saw Batman and Robin,
Mm-hmm.
I actually went with a youth group to go see it, which I'm surprised. Why did the church take a bunch of kids to go see Batman? But I remember all the teenage girls, when they did the close-up of their butts going into the suits and jiggling, they're like, "Ew!" And I was just like, this was just weird.
There was a lot of that.
It was just weird.
When Batman and Robin would suit up, there was a lot of like cod piece shots and ass shots and all this kind of stuff. I'm not even going to repeat what Logan just said on the chat. It's funny, though. That's pretty funny. But it's true.
Oh.
Yeah.
Burn.
Yeah. Val Kilmer roasted. H.R. Giger, this is all kind of ties together. We're always ending up talking about H.R. Giger and his tubes. But H.R. Giger did a version of the Batmobile for this movie. Was it a tube? It was not a tube, but they did consider it to be way too sinister for the film. And Warner Brothers kicked that out altogether.
Did Joel Schumacher pay him to design a tube to put Val Kilmer in?
No, I bet he did by the end of this fucking thing now. But I'll tell you one thing, Joel Schumacher, I'm surprised he didn't like Giger's thing, because I think it was sort of like very phallic, because it's Giger. It's, But anyway, the original cut of Batman Forever was 2 hours and 40 minutes long. A lot was cut out of this movie. And I'll talk about some of those things really quick. Like Two-Face, originally the movie opened with Two-Face breaking out of the Arkham Asylum, writing on the wall in a guard's blood, "The Bat must die." Warner Brothers.
They never really explained how he went crazy.
Only in that flashback, which is still in the movie.
Yeah.
They like show video footage, like the greatest videographer in Gotham.
That was the same thing with, Freeze.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay.
Right. But yeah, so they had that. There was also a scene where Bruce and Dick Grayson are training, and it explains why Dick Grayson is such a martial arts wizard or whatever, because he just seems to be instantly a ninja. I think one of the more interesting things is they had this running theme within the movie. It's totally removed from the film as it exists now. But originally in Batman Forever, you had, hey, Goldsby, what's up, buddy? I know who you are. Originally, that we had this sort of running joke in Batman Forever where you had like Two-Face in an early scene tells Batman, you know better than I am. You're a killer. And Batman goes, oh. Because remember, in the Burton movies, he was killing motherfuckers left, right, and sideways.
And smiling about it.
And this movie was going to actually, address that. And they ran that as a theme throughout the whole movie, which probably would have been interesting if they left that in. And eventually it leads up to a scene. Remember when Joker and when Two-Face and Riddler break into the mansion and they shoot and it like grazes Bruce's head?
Yeah.
In the original cut of the movie, Bruce wakes up with amnesia. And Alfred has to take him down into the Batcave to remind him of, who he was. And there's a moment in there where you see Bruce, and as he's remembering who he was, he has a flashback to his father, telling his father that he really wants to go see Zorro. And his father says, we'll go see it eventually. And eventually they do go see the movie, and it's on that night that the father and the mother get shot. So
all your fault.
Bruce has this guilt complex the whole time that it's his fault. And then Alfred shows him and it's one of those things like in that fucking Spider-Man movie where it's like, why did you keep this from me the whole time? But Alfred pulls out his diary, like the dad's diary, and it says, I really wanted to see Zorro too. And so we decided.
Who cares?
Well, this is this whole subplot, right? About Batman realizing that I am not really a killer.
I'm not a killer because I asked to go see a movie.
Zorro.
And I'm cleared because Dad wanted to see it too. What is that?
So Dad killed himself.
That's right. It's all, yeah.
The mom was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Actually, it's Zorro's fault.
There you go. Perfect. But the thing about this movie is, so there was a lot of stuff cut out of it. I'm not saying any of that, clearly, in your opinion, would have made it better.
Yeah.
I just think it's just interesting. And originally, when the Nolan movies came out, the first one, they released a big box set of all the old ones, and they were talking about releasing the 2-hour and 40-minute extended cut of Batman Forever, which they never did. But a lot of these scenes you can see on DVD extras.
It's kind of like I found out like Ninja Turtles, the original movie.
Mm-hmm.
The director wants to do a director's cut because there's a lot of stuff that he didn't get to use.
And
but it'll never.
The world is crying for that.
I am.
Really?
Want to see it.
Yes. The original one?
Yes.
The one we went to see as kids?
Yes. Not the sequel, Vanilla Ice, the original
one. I gotcha. Okay. Well, it was one of the most successful independent movies of all time.
Exactly. New Line.
But anyway, back to Batman. Elliot Goldenthal replaced Danny Elfman as the composer of this flick. And he did a fine job. Elliot Goldenthal is actually a really good composer. There's nothing wrong with the music. I don't think the music is the problem in this particular movie. But like with the first Batman, they decided to release 2 soundtracks. They were going to do the soundtrack with Elliot Goldenthal, all the musical cues, and naturally, you need some pop music.
Need some Seal.
Kiss from a Rose was a song I could not get away from in 1995.
You could not, in that stupid video. Remember the line, pleasure, my pain, and it was always him turning around.
Right. You know who directed that?
Who?
Joel Schumacher.
Oh.
My
pain.
That's right. And a lot of people nowadays probably don't know who Seal is. But if you were around in 1995, you know who Seal was.
You knew who it was. Now, his best song was Never Gonna Survive.
Yeah, I remember that song.
Sorry.
Now, another song that came from that album, which got a lot of airplay on MTV back in the days when they played music, was YouTube's Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me.
Yeah, YouTube.
And that was an animated music video, I remember.
That
had like Gotham
better.
and stuff. Yeah, it sort of had a little bit of the Batman animated series feel to it.
Yeah.
And it had its character.
That song, they didn't overplay it to the point where you wanted to throw yourself off of a building.
No, but the Seal song was just like unbelievably overplayed.
Someone just posted, I was 6 and 95.
Well, let me tell you, that's a good thing because you didn't have to listen, Logan, to all this fucking Kiss from a Rose, which never ended.
It never ended. It was sort of like the Titanic theme a couple of years later, where they put in like bits of the movie dialogue throughout the song.
And it's like every fucking school prom, they're playing Kiss from a Rose. Every school, every public event, they're playing Kiss from a Rose.
Kmart.
It's like Dick Clark on New Year's Eve, fucking Kiss from a Rose. You can't get away from this shit. It was a very successful album.
But you couldn't hate Seal. I mean, even after that, I was like, I still like Seal. I just hate that song.
And Dominic's pointing out the Batman and Robin album, which we're about to jump into.
That's right.
I have some things to say about that album. Now, and not that I don't like it, but I do have a couple things to say about it. This movie grossed $336.5 million. Mm-hmm. Huge success.
Did the Danger Mouse was saying the song probably made more money than the movie?
Well, yeah, it probably did. I don't know. Batman Forever was a big success.
It was.
And it made a lot of money on those toys, even though the toys had nipples too. I remember that shit. I don't know how kid-friendly that is. These fucking toys have nipples.
And McDonald's was happy. You had the Batman Forever glass little mugs that you would get with your meal, the Happy Meals.
And the critics actually were kind of mixed. They weren't all poo-pooing the movie.
That's right.
How you like that for a phraseology?
Yeah.
Poo-pooing the movie.
There was no poo-poo.
There was no poo-pooing going on in Batman Forever. Some people said it was a little excessive and kind of stupid, but not everybody.
I remember when it came out, my mom loved Michael Keaton. She's like, no Michael Keaton.
Val Kilmer, you are no Michael Keaton. But I know a lot of people criticized Val because they thought his performance was kind of wooden, kind of inexpressive.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, amidst this movie, Val Kilmer's performance is the least of my concerns.
That's true.
It's sort of like the score. I mean, Elliot Goldenthal was like the best thing about the movie because he did some good music.
Well, when you watched it, you weren't like, oh God, Val Kilmer, what a great Batman. He was just like, he's there.
Yeah, he's kind of there.
He fits the bill. Okay, whatever.
And maybe that's kind of was his idea about the whole thing because he's just doing it kind of for a paycheck. Yeah. He didn't even want to read the fucking script. He's like, give me a Batman paycheck. I heard what Jack Nicholson made on that first movie. Give me that money, Malkin says.
Put the lines on the back of the check and I'll read it.
This movie was such a success that the sequel was instantly greenlit and fast-tracked. That previously there had been a 3-year gap between these movies. They wanted to do a 2-year gap. And they probably would have wanted to do a 1-year gap if that was possible. But with all the special effects and shit, you couldn't really do that.
And surprise, Val Kilmer's not back.
Val Kilmer did not come back. There are differing stories about that. Joel Schumacher said that he was fired because how difficult he was. Val Kilmer said he didn't realize the movie was being fast-tracked and he was already signed on to The Saint and Island of Dr. Moreau, and so he had to quit. Otherwise, he would have done it. I don't know who to believe, frankly. I don't really think Val Kilmer was that into doing another Batman movie.
I don't know, that Bat money.
The Bat money, but he was about to do a movie with Marlon Brando.
Yeah, so he had to go be with an actor of his caliber.
That's right. Little did he know how that would turn out.
I love that story.
Because Marlon Brando was not impressed. We'll do that story on another day. Sticking to this,
me happy. Yes.
Joel Schumacher and Akiva Goldsmith worked together on the script again. Joel Schumacher had seen an episode of the animated series called Heart of Ice, written by Paul Dini, and decided Mr. Freeze should be the villain.
Well, they should have got Paul Dini to write the script.
If only. That was not. I don't think Paul Dini would have been quite as into doing the kid-friendly thing as. No. Or at least not to this extent, because by this point, Joel Schumacher's idea for the next movie was he wanted to do a full-on homage to '66 Batman, camp and all, and he was not subtle about it. Again, 11 stupid. He turned it all the way up. Chris O'Donnell returned. As I said, Val Kilmer did not. William Baldwin was again considered. Joel Schumacher had a thing for William Baldwin. He was considered yet again to replace.
And yet again, Warner Brothers is like, no.
Absolutely not. No Billy Baldwin for us, please. Joel Schumacher was on a plane, and he saw an ad for From Dusk Till Dawn. Yeah. And this ad showed the face of George Clooney, right? Mm-hmm. So Joel Schumacher pulled out a Sharpie and drew on the ad for From Dusk Till Dawn the bat cowl on George Clooney and was like, that's a Batman. He could be Batman. Because at this point, you just kind of need him to stand there and, make sure he's in the light, basically. You're not looking for any sort of acting.
And make sure that at the time, women find him very attractive, so they come to the theater.
They did. This was in the time of ER.
Yeah.
In fact, a deal had to be worked out in which he could do both simultaneously. And since both were filming on Warner Brothers' lot, he would run from one set, ER, to Batman and Robin and back and forth. He did them both at the exact same time. I'm talking about George Clooney.
Yeah.
Now, this was before Steven Soderbergh got his hands on George Clooney with Out of Sight and told him to stop doing the bobblehead thing. That helped George Clooney immensely because Steven Soderbergh actually told him that on Out of Sight. And if you notice, post Out of Sight, he never does that whole like, I'm so smug and clever and my head bobbles. And that was a very irritating. I mean, I'm sorry, maybe it's just me, but George Clooney was really irritating when he would bob his fucking head like that. Do you know what I mean? He did it a lot in everything. In From Dusk Till Dawn. I like the movie, but his fucking head bobbles all the time in that movie. He's like, but let me tell you something. Mexican gangsters do not explode when sunlight hits them. You know, and he's all like that. It's like, George, hold your fucking head still, bro.
We're trying to keep it in frame.
It's very distracting. And I guess that's what Soderbergh, he probably watched these same movies that I did and was like, God, that's really fucking distracting. And when he got him in a room, he finally could just tell him, like I probably would have been like, George, stop fucking bobbling your head. This is really irritating.
Everyone else was afraid to tell him.
But after we got off of my George Clooney side note, George Clooney mid-90s side note, because he's not like that anymore. He doesn't bobble his head. Let's jump back into Batman and Robin. Patrick Stewart was the first person considered for Mr. Freeze. At this point, Patrick Stewart was considered for every bald character.
That's right. We need a baldy. Get Patrick.
They didn't get him, though, because Joel Schumacher thought Arnold Schwarzenegger was be a bigger, star. Because
they made him an Olympian athlete.
Yes, he's an Olympian. Right. And you have the perfect videography of his origin, too, where somehow the cameras are always positioned in just the right places to get
And we got great coverage.
A lot of great coverage on that origin. What's ironic, though, is Patrick Stewart was already bald. Arnold Schwarzenegger refused to shave his head. They had to put a bald cap on him and makeup and a suit that took 6 hours. But hey, you know what? He broke a record and got paid $25 million for this movie. So I'm sorry, Arnie. I am not crying for you, Argentina.
No.
Because basically, if you were getting paid $25 million, which is the most money anyone had ever gotten paid for a movie up until that time, and for this movie, can you imagine?
Yeah, well, they didn't know yet.
If you have to sit through 6 hours of...
I think the only the two movies that probably flopped for him at this point were Jingle All the Way and probably Last Action Hero? Or did
Jingle All the Way was after, wasn't it?
Was it? I don't know.
No, but Last Action Hero had already bombed, yeah. But Arnold was not used to bombing at this point. This was pre, end of days. Like, that time had not come yet. This was pre, Terminator reboot number 17.
Yeah.
Where everyone is so fucking tired of it.
Yeah.
People were still into Batman.
And Arnie.
And it's kind of surprising that this movie did so poorly, considering all the elements should be good. But then again, I'll get into my theory for that here momentarily. Let me talk about one thing about casting, though. Uma Thurman was cast as Poison Ivy because she wanted to play a femme fatale. A few years later, she would, in a much better series of movies, Kill Bill. But at this point, she had never played that sort of character before. Mm-hmm. So she was like, yeah, okay, Batman money and femme fatale. I'm in. And I'm ready to chew some scenery. And boy, does she. And of course, Alicia Silverstone was the only choice post-Clueless to play Batgirl.
And those Aerosmith videos.
Yeah, well, that was pre-Clueless, those. So yeah, she was the it girl, which is kind of odd to say now, but at that time, Alicia Silverstone was all over everything.
Yep.
And Alicia Silverstone, this was pre-Blast from the Past, when it all started to go under.
I think Batman and Robin is when it started.
You think so? Yeah, I think you can make a case for that.
This was the beginning of the end.
Well, I like to call her Alicia You Sleep Silverstone, because she has some of the weirdest lines in this movie. Like, at one point, she's sitting with Alfred at his bedside, and Alfred's like, oh, darling, go to bed. And Alicia goes, you sleep! I'm like, damn, don't be so fucking aggressive with the old man. He's sick anyway. But anyway, talking about Alfred, they changed Batgirl's origin, because in this, Barbara is Alfred's niece.
Which is so believable.
Right. She is not Commissioner Gordon's daughter, which for a comic book fan is a little weird.
Yeah, I didn't like that. That bothered me a lot.
In some ways, I sort of understand it because later in the Nolan films, Gordon was the guy that put the coat on Batman, on Bruce's shoulders. So there's like a personal connection all through their life. In these movies, Commissioner Gordon's just kind of hanging. Yeah. Like, he's kind of okay with Batman. You see him for a scene or two, but there's not like a bromance going on.
No.
Like in the later films,
Or in the comic books, that relationship that they had.
So perhaps what they did was just saying, well, Alfred is already a major character by this point. He has a personal connection to the Wayne boys. So maybe we should just make that. Like, I could see that as a script adjustment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
because particularly in how Commissioner Gordon is portrayed in this movie. Now, I'm not trying to excuse everything they did in Batman and Robin, including those ice puns, which I don't even think you can excuse that.
Or Alicia Silverstone's facial reactions.
Talk about a wooden performance. She makes Val Kilmer look like he's, Jim Carrey. Because Alicia Silverstone, this is not her finest hour. I'll put it that way. I mean,
poor Chris O'Donnell.
And it's not just the script. Some of the performance stuff of Alicia's is not like, obviously you could say like, you sleep is a script issue. Like, who would write that line? But some of the way other lines and perfectly fine. I mean, there are things that were written perfectly fine. They just don't play well.
I didn't like how she was like this biker girl.
Yeah, they tried to toughen her up, and they tried to make like the bond between her and Dick Grayson as they both like motorcycles. Speaking of Dick Grayson, though, Chris O'Donnell said later on, obviously not when you're at the time when you're promoting the movie, but in the years since, he said, when we were making Batman Forever, it really felt like we were making a movie. Mm-hmm. Like he had a feeling like they were doing something. He said that when they made Batman and Robin, everything had changed by then. And he felt like he was making a kid's toy commercial. He said everything was built around that. Like, you had the Hockey Team from Hell because you wanted to make Hockey Team from Hell action figures and sell them. Like everything he said in the movie was made, like you could almost sense it on the set. Mm-hmm. That this is a prop that we're going to sell and some sort of catalog.
You're basically a Hasbro cartoon.
Basically so, yeah. And this sentiment was backed up by John Glover, who played Dr. Jason Woodrue. Now, Jason Woodrue was a character from the comic books. Mm-hmm. And he's the guy that kind of kills Poison Ivy. He's the crazy mad scientist, the part at the very beginning, and she goes down into the vines and sort of like Catwoman. It's like she becomes Poison Ivy, but who knows why. Yeah. So that's John Glover. John Glover said that his experience of working on the set was just having Joel Schumacher sit atop a crane with a megaphone, screaming before every take, "Don't forget, this is a cartoon." And Glover said it was very difficult to concentrate on acting when you're trying to basically fulfill the requirements of being a living cartoon.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like from conception.
And it's not a cartoon.
It's not a cartoon. It's clearly not a cartoon. Even though you have this like really stupid shit that would not even work in a cartoon.
Even the cartoon was more intelligent than the live action film Batman and Robin, the animated series, Mask of the Phantasm. I mean, that is an excellent film.
Well, I mean, look, if you had a scene in Mask of the Phantasm where Batman pulled out a credit card, and it said Forever on it, and it was his Bat card, and the soundtrack goes cha-ching, it wouldn't have fit in that movie.
No.
Like that's not like even animated. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
Maybe in like a really goofy.
Maybe like in a Saturday Night Live skit.
Yes. A lot of this could have been a Saturday Night Live skit. And also this is a film, I don't even think a lot of things were cut from it. I just don't think it makes any sense.
No.
And I don't think they were aiming for it to make any sense. They thought it would be cool to see Batman and Robin surf on the doors of a spaceship as it rises up. And it doesn't matter where the spaceship is going. It doesn't matter how they're going to land safely. They just thought that would be cool. So let's have that happen. There are a lot of things like that. At the end, Poison Ivy gets trapped by her own flower because Batgirl kicks her into it, and you go, why is the flower attacking her?
Yeah. And
nobody cared about that.
I always hated the scenes where Batman and Robin are fighting because they both are in love with her.
Yes.
I always thought that was just cringy.
Because Poison Ivy has this like love gas. Yeah. And she breathes it onto them like putrid breath.
Basically, they ripped off the Sandra Bullock movie, Love Potion #9.
Right. But it's with Batman and Robin, which makes a whole lot of sense. Now this movie, why it cost this much money, I don't know. It cost $160 million. $160 million. And that's not to count $125 million marketing budget. So basically, they would have had to make the gross of Batman Forever, the whole gross of the movie, just to break even.
Oh my.
What are you thinking? I'll tell you what they're thinking. They're thinking merchandise.
Merchandise.
Because by this point, Warner Brothers is like, it's all about how many action figures and tie-ins we get. They had the Six Flags over Georgia ride,
I remember, and the Batman ride was going to come out.
Yeah, all that was happening around this time. That's where the income was coming from these movies. That's where the cash flow was. The movie itself didn't really matter.
It's a commercial.
The
products.
The movie had to exist so that you could sell these things to justify the selling of this thing. But that the movie made any sense, it was well written or anything like that, didn't really matter that much, I don't think, to anybody, including, sad to say, Joel Schumacher at this time. Now, like I was saying before, I don't really think Joel Schumacher should be blamed for everything. I really think he tried to do a good job. And I do say that he does sort of step up. Years later, he stepped up and he said, man, I apologize for everything that I did in Batman and Robin. If I disappointed anyone, I'm sorry. You're not going to see very many directors say that.
That's true.
So on that basis, I will give Joel Schumacher a little bit of a pass because he was doing his job. Needless to say, he did not make that money back.
No.
Batman and Robin was an infamous commercial and critical.
I remember after it opened, it was summer, and I was in my room and I could hear, I think it was like the Today Show or something, and they were going on about how awful it was, and it was a bomb, and it was just all over the news. It was like the following week.
Oh yeah, I mean it was pretty bad. I'll tell you how bad it was. Okay, they opened. It was a huge opening, $43 million the opening weekend, which at that time was enormous. Yeah. By the second week of Batman and Robin's release, it had dropped 63%.
Word of mouth had gotten out.
That's exactly what it was. They had dropped 63%. The only time something like that drops off so steadily is not only when people leave the theater and don't come back to see it again, it's when they leave the theater and tell people that's shit. Don't go see that. That's why you have a steep drop off like that. And so instantly, everyone knew this was a fucking stinker. But it didn't keep him from releasing 2 soundtrack albums. When in doubt, merchandise and release 2 soundtrack albums.
That's right.
One from Elliot Goldenthal, who came back, Elliot Goldenthal. And again, they tried to sort of catch lightning in the bottle with the Batman Forever pop soundtrack. It didn't really work. There was one good song. Smashing Pumpkins had a good song on it.
They did have a song on that.
Remember, the end is the beginning is the end.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad song. That's actually, but they didn't play that too much.
No.
The one they played all the time was the one by R. Kelly.
Oh yeah.
Which means Gotham City. You know that one?
Yeah.
Played in end credits. R. Kelly, who is known for something other than Gotham City these days.
I believe I can fly.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. I believe I can fly. I believe I'm going to prison.
That's right.
No, I mean, look.
He believes he can fly over the prison walls.
I believe I can pee. I believe I can pee on you. That R. Kelly. Yeah.
You took it a little too far.
Hey, look, he's the same. He's the guy, He's the guy. He's the pee guy. Yeah.
And someone just typed double ouch.
Double ouch, R. Kelly. The funniest thing was when he did that interview, he leapt to his feet and was yelling at Oprah's friend. That was amazing. Really proved his case for sure. Innocent men do that all the time.
Oh, the 90s.
But this was pre all of that. This was pre-sex slaves. This was pre
Space Jam. No, this was after. Was this after or before Space Jam?
This was after Space Jam.
Yeah,
but
it was
like after it by a year.
Yeah,
something like that. It was very close to Space Jam. But
another classic.
Well, that's probably what somebody at WB probably saw Space Jam and was like, let's get that guy to do the song. Because I'm sure his record will be clean for the rest of his life. Little did they know. He liked little girls. This was universally panned by almost every critic, Batman and Robin.
I remember.
And it was just absolutely taking shit, mainly because of the silly, goofy approach.
Well, you know how people like to watch YouTube videos where people roast, movies and stuff. I mean, that was the summer you took joy in watching, reviews of Batman and Robin because they were you just enjoyed it. You were just like, let's talk about how bad this is.
Well, let's talk
about it.
Let's talk for a moment about you and I, though, because we both saw this in theaters, yeah?
We did.
Yeah, not together.
No, we didn't know each other yet.
No, we didn't know each other. But I remember seeing this in the theater, and I remember, well, I was a teenager at the time, so it's not like I was that young. But I remember just looking at it and going, oh my God, how far we have fallen.
Yeah, I remember when I saw it, I thought, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But I felt like the people that were with me, I mean, they were too busy going, ooh, their booties are jiggling in their pants when they jump into them. And then there was someone else who thought they were like a Batman expert. And they're like, oh, the next movie's going to have Harley Quinn and Madonna's going to play her.
Well.
And I went, okay, I guess if she's doing her Nikki Finn thing from Who's That Girl? I remember being very confused by people talking about
eventually,
that.
I'm going to tell you the whole story of that.
Okay.
You're trying to push me ahead of myself.
I am. Let's move it along, Elsie.
But let me tell you something. Before we get there, let me tell you something. I went to see this movie in the theater.
Stinky.
And honestly, because I saw all the Batmans in the theater. Every Batman movie since Tim Burton I've seen in the theater.
This is the only one I saw in the theater.
Really? You didn't see Batman Forever in the theater?
No, I didn't. My brother saw all of them in the theater, but I didn't because,
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, even from Batman Forever, I mean, we're not even talking about the Tim Burton ones. I thought, how far we've fallen. Do you know what I mean?
I'm sorry, I keep seeing comments.
What's going on down there? I got a copy from Goodwill for $2. I paid too much. What are you talking about? The sound? Oh, the movie itself? Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I don't think you could get this at the 99-cent store. Now, what was I talking about before that?
When you saw it in the theater.
Oh yeah, when I saw it in the theaters, I already thought that it had fallen so far from Batman Forever, and that's really saying something. Now, as you were saying before, even though this movie was a huge flop, before the box office returns came in and it was this huge flop, they determined they were going to make another. They were going to make a fifth Batman movie. And it was going to be called Batman Triumphant, which is not what Batman and Robin was. They obviously did not have.
It's called Batman Trash Can. They
really had a crystal ball on that one, didn't they? Batman Triumphant, which would have been the return of George Clooney as Batman, with the return of Chris O'Donnell as Robin, and Alicia Silverstone would have been in there too. Alicia, so remember, even she got one of those dressing montages with her bust.
Yeah,
and
her booty jig.
And her nipples were on there.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm surprised no one protested that.
I'm surprised they didn't give her a little camel toe.
Because there's like a little bat camel toe.
Can we talk about how does Freeze and Poison Ivy team up? He kills the plants.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Mr. Freeze's whole thing is to freeze Gotham and kill everybody, including the plants. And Poison Ivy's solution is, let me help. And we're gonna kill the plants, but then I'm gonna regrow them, I think, or then we're gonna take over the world with the frozen world with plants in it. And it's like, how does that work? I mean, clearly they were not thinking about these things. They were thinking, how many Poison Ivy dolls can we make? Because every time Poison Ivy changes her wardrobe, she has a new figurine. That you can sell.
That's right.
Every time she had a hairstyle in every scene.
It looked like a Spice Girl hairstyle at one point.
Yeah. And it was sort of the Queen Amidala thing. Every time you saw her, she was in a different wardrobe.
Yep.
That wasn't for creative purposes, though. That was because you could have like Poison Ivy's dinnerware, Poison Ivy. You could have beach Poison Ivy. You could have like little red ponytail Poison Ivy. And you could have Poison Ivy in the green suit from the comic book. Take your pick. Which I guess I can understand because everybody else just has the one change. Elle Macpherson, I forgot, was the love interest. Everyone forgot Elle Macpherson was in this movie because she's only in it for like 2 scenes.
I'm sure she was grateful for that.
She was originally in more. Do you want to hear this story?
Okay.
She was in. Had a whole subplot of her and Bruce, George Clooney, getting engaged, and then Poison Ivy snuffed her. Elle Macpherson got killed by Poison Ivy. And Batman comes for seeking revenge. They cut all Elle Macpherson getting killed stuff. I don't know why. Probably it was too scary.
Well, I'm sure she was probably like, thank God.
Yeah, thank God I'm only in 2 scenes.
They won't remember me.
But as you were saying before, Batman Triumphant was meant to be the 5th Batman movie. Luckily, it wasn't. But they had the writer of that movie, The Cell. I don't know if you remember the Jennifer Lopez movie where she goes into Vincent D'Onofrio's nightmares. Really crazy movie. For some reason, they saw that and were like, let's get him to write Batman. Like, okay. So that seemed promising for a moment. But the idea was always to continue this trend of, family friendly, goofier and goofier every time. So I don't even think the Cell guy could have saved this thing. But Coolio appears in Batman and Robin. Did you know that the character Coolio plays in Batman and Robin was meant to become the Scarecrow in Batman Triumphant?
No.
So Coolio was going to be the Scarecrow. Perfect sense, eh? What do you think about that one? So the guy it's no longer like a crazy psychologist who works at Arkham. It's the guy that runs the motorcycle races. He's the guy that's going to be Scarecrow. I guess maybe he's selling fear drugs on the street or something. I don't know. I haven't read the script, but I know that Madonna was meant to play Harley Quinn. Now, Harley Quinn in this version was not going to be the Joker's love interest. She was going to be the Joker's daughter. So the Joker had a kid, sort of like the Emperor, like the Emperor.
Yeah.
The Emperor's going around impregnating people we've never heard of. Well, I guess the Joker was doing that too. And it was Harley Quinn. And it was played by Madonna. And I'm sure she would have done a song. And there would have been maybe she would have been like Prince.
Like the Dick Tracy album, where they had 2 soundtracks for that one. The regular one, and then she had an album called I'm Breathless, which had all the songs, and then it had Vogue on it. Because I had that one.
And they would have done, I bet you they would have done the Prince thing with Madonna on Batman Triumphant. Because since she was going to be in it anyway, playing Harley Quinn. What do you think of the whole Harley Quinn being the Joker's daughter thing?
That's creepy to me.
Kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah, considering,
well,
who Harley Quinn is. Now, if they ever did a Batman Beyond, you could always do Harley Quinn's granddaughters, which are in Batman Beyond.
No, really?
Yeah. They're like these, and they hang out with the Joker's crew.
Well, this is one interesting idea that Joel Schumacher had. And I don't know how far they got with it in the script, but he wanted Jack Nicholson to return. Now, I don't know if it was in flashback or actually like the Emperor. Suddenly he's just alive for some reason.
Well, he was laughing at the end. Was he dead?
Well, yeah.
Yes, he was dead.
He was absolutely dead. Yeah, he was as dead as a fucking doornail. So anyway, that was Joel Schumacher's idea for a 5th Batman movie. Did not come to pass because Batman and Robin was such a huge flop. I think it's good. We got a long break from Batman, though. And when eventually he returned in Batman Begins. And maybe we'll go over those films and as we continue this Batman cinematic journey that we're on. But this was a pretty fun show. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed talking about Batman Forever.
That's right.
Batman and Robin.
My point earlier.
Yeah.
They all started playing the villains like they were the Joker. Was that their direction?
I think so. I think the idea was, well, that's how Jack did it. So let's just, because none of these people were, except maybe Jim Carrey. None of these people were into these fucking, like Tommy Lee Jones didn't give a shit about being a comic book movie.
But he was acting like a buffoon.
Yes, and I think that was his idea of how a comic book villain acted. I mean, I honestly think that Tommy Lee Jones was like, oh, okay, that's the kind of movie we're doing. Well, that's the way he did it. I'll do that. I don't think Tommy Lee Jones sat down and read The Origin of Harvey Dent and thought about it. I think he looked at it and was like, this is terrible. My son wants me to do this movie. I guess I'll do it. Batman money.
And let me schmuck it up even more than Jim Carrey because he's stealing the scene.
That's right, because no one steals the scene from me. I'm Ty Cobb. That was another reason they said that Jim Carrey didn't, or that Tommy Lee Jones didn't like Jim Carrey, because Ace Ventura came out at the same time as Ty Cobb, or the movie called Cobb, which was about Ty Cobb that starred Tommy Lee Jones and made an enormous amount of money.
That's terrible, just to call it Cobb.
Tommy Lee Jones had a Cobb up his ass over Cobb. Because he was like, who is this buffoon who made more money with that silly, stupid movie Ace Ventura than I made? And I played Ty Cobb, and I'm a true actor. Tommy Lee Jones is not known for his sense
And it's
of humor.
the early 90s, and my movie was just the last name.
Have you ever seen, right, that's the way all these fucking movies are, Nixon, Cobb.
Or it's initials. Or it's either initials or last
JFK,
name.
right?
Jufk.
What? Yeah, Juff. Oliver Stone, Juff. But anyway, so that's kind of our show on this.
Yes.
If you ever just want to sit down and watch something funny, watch Tommy Lee Jones do interviews with hipster interviewers, like modern interviewers.
Okay.
It's hilarious because they want to ask him questions like, if you could be any one of your characters, who would it be? And Tommy Lee Jones just looks at him deadpan like, I just really don't understand that way of thinking. What are you talking? I do not think like that. And it's like he so doesn't go for any of these questions. And it's kind of cringy because you go, oh, this poor interviewer is trying his best, but this guy is not giving him an inch. Because Tommy Lee Jones, if he don't want to play along with you, he won't play.
Over.
Yeah, it's over. I mean, I don't think he's the biggest fan of doing like press junkets anyway. So if you want to be cutesy with him, the chances are he's not going to play the game.
So him and Jimmy Fallon would not probably jive. No.
There's probably a good reason why Jimmy Fallon has never had Tommy Lee on the show. But anyway, we digress. But you guys, if you want to see something funny, look up some of that too, because it's pretty fucking fun. But anyway, that was our show on Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. 2 movies I hope that you do not watch, especially Batman and Robin. Or if you have the soundtrack. I mean, like I said, Forever had a good soundtrack, and if you like R. Kelly, Gotham City, go for the other.
I remember that. I just was really confused.
What?
Gotham City.
Gotham City.
Like, why would you do the song about Gotham City?
I don't know. And I remember the video. He's standing up on top of a building, and he's singing out to Gotham City, and he's probably thinking, never mind. Okay, so anyway. Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. Thank you for joining us on the show. Rebecca, thank you for joining me. And until next time, watch out for R. Kelly and take care of yourselves.